In Northeast alone, more than 5 lakh crore is being invested to develop the entire Northeast region. In Northeast alone, more than 5 lakh crore is being invested to develop the entire Northeast region. Approval which used to take 7 years, 10 years, 8 years, 3 years, got approved in 1 year.
Namaste and a very good evening. Welcome to Citti Media. I'm your host, Citti. If there is one ministry that has been praised for being very efficient and transforming the work culture, it's the Ministry of Transport, Road Highways. Nitin Gadkari ji has set a precedent on how infrastructure needs to be developed. The Prime Minister Gati Shakti Master Plan was unveiled and presented by the Finance Minister very recently in the budget session. This transformation over the last 5 to 7 years has been widely appreciated, not just from the sections that support this particular government, but even from the opposition as well. There has been a team that has worked very hard behind the scenes on ensuring that the number of highways built, bridges constructed, critical infrastructure developed has shot up astronomically over the last few years. We are joined by one such person who served as the private secretary to Nitin Gadkari ji. And right now he's an advisor to the National Highways Authority of India. And he has also served as the deputy director for FICCI. And right now he's an author with his first book called Building Bridges. Please join me in welcoming Vaibhav Dange ji. Namaste Vaibhav ji. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you, first of all?
Good. Thank you so much.
Vaibhav ji, you're one of the leading figures who's referred to when anybody has to study about the infrastructure growth under the Modi regime, and you've worked with Nitin Gadkari ji very closely. What I want to begin by asking is, several nations like the United States, China, became a global power because of infrastructure. In India's civilizational history, how and what role did roadways play? If you could please explain to our viewers, it would be a good opening.
Thank you, Sharan. And you are right. Throughout the civilizations all across the world, in the world history, infrastructure has always played a very pivotal role in the growth of civilization, or rather civilizations have nurtured their growth through around the infrastructure. Probably in a very earlier stages of civilizations, rivers were the primary drivers of mobility, and the civilizations used to come across the rivers in terms of villages being established, society running their economic activities, movement of people and cargo through along the rivers. Over the years, of course, with the growth of the technology and engineering and science coming into picture, as man evolved, the various modes of transportation came in, and highways became a very important component of this mobility in India, globally as well. As old as, for example, in India, we all know that Muhammad Shah Afdali built the Delhi, Kanpur, and Kolkata road, which is called a GT Karnal road, which is a road which was built by Muhammad Suri. And there are references that through that civilization started moving from western part of India to the eastern part of India. The reference of Silk Route is always there. There was no defined modern road per se, but there were routes through which goods and movements used to happen, and they were all now historically they are proven routes, and people have been using it for movement of people, cargo, material, technology, everything. So in a way, if I put it in modern sense, the highways or roadways are the arteries of any nation. That's how your entire movement of people, goods, services that happens. And therefore, as even Prime Minister has said all so many times in his addresses, that our highway infrastructure is primarily our arteries, like our blood arteries in our body. And if we strengthen them, that is how our entire country is bound to get strengthened, and they will become our growth drivers in a long term. And we have seen it, as I said in the historical references, wherever highways has been developed, wherever infrastructure has been developed, society has got opportunity to take their goods, services, their art, their culture, their handicraft, their handlooms, their agriculture produce, their forest produce. Everything can be moved once you have a accessibility all along. And in modern sense, the accessibility also provides opportunity for the government to reach out to the remotest part of the region, so that services can be provided in terms of education, health. So there is no second thought that infrastructure, and primarily road infrastructure, is a very critical component in the development phase of any nation, for that matter, and rightly so for India as well.
It is indeed very important for India. And in fact, since about 1999, when perhaps the Golden Quadrilateral project was initiated by the NDA-1 government, there was a short break after that, after which, since the Modi government came into place, perhaps one of the priorities has been infrastructure and building roadways for that matter. Vaibhavji, this is something that you've witnessed firsthand, and you've also led a few of these initiatives. So, can you put things into perspective for us as to what has happened since 2014 and what has changed compared to our recent past?
Of course, I'll of course try to explain. See, as you said, in 1999, during then Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's regime, a very ambitious national highway development program was envisaged, and probably that was the first, in a way, programmatic approach of highway development, national highway development in India. It was a first such a large scale, out of box idea, where all major four corners of the nation were connected through north, south, east, west corridors and the Golden Quadrilateral. And that was the first, in a way, 4-lane national highway network. And it has started fueling the entire growth perspective for our economy from 99 onwards. And the infrastructure started getting better and better. Over between 2004 and 2014, that pace started slowly going down. In 2014, when the new government came in and Prime Minister Modi became Prime Minister and Mr. Gadkari became the Minister for Road Transport and Highways, the situation at that time was, we were building around 11 kilometers of highway, developing, redeveloping, or reconstructing around 11 kilometers of highway per day. And that amounted to, the last quarter was almost 2-3 kilometers a day. More than 300 highway projects were either delayed or stalled or stuck for various reasons, because of the approvals, because of the financial problems, because of the various reasons, and amounting to more than around 3 lakh crore of investment which was put into building these roads. And so banks were also under tremendous stress. Most of the projects were becoming NPA. So highway sector was really in a bad shape. I remember incidents in 2014 when Mr. Gadkari became Minister for Road Transport and Highways, and he started reviewing. And as part of his team, we were reviewing various projects and the reasons for delays and things like that. L&T chairman, then chairman of L&T, came to Mr. Gadkari saying that, requesting that kindly we want to withdraw from couple of projects in national highways. And Mr. Gadkari was surprised. Normally contractors, companies are rushing to minister to give them work, give them job. And chairman L&T said, sorry sir, our board has taken a conscious decision that we will not participate in highway sector in India. And it was a big shock for all of us that the major engineering company like L&T takes a very conscious decision not to participate in the highway sector. So Mr. Gadkari said that I'll not comment on what happened earlier, but I can promise you we will try to provide a governance that will encourage you to participate in highways. He said, sorry, sir, you put some fine on us, but I'm sorry, we can't do it. And they withdrew from two projects. But 7 years later, today L&T is doing more than 15,000 crores of highway projects. So that transformation has happened. Transformation happened because of the I remember in 2014, in the early period of the government, Prime Minister took a review meeting of each ministries after he becoming Prime Minister, and what could be our vision for that specific sector. And while reviewing the highway sector, he put forward a few larger vision in front of everybody of us. And he said that when we presented him a data that India has around 52 lakh kilometers of road highways, out of which around 96 to 98,000 kilometer was national highway. But this less than 2% of highways were carrying more than 60% of the load in terms of people and goods movement. So we suggested that this is a very huge imbalance among the length covered and the amount of pressure highways carry. So he said, let's target that by 2024 we will double our national highway length. And that was the first target given by the Prime Minister. And today in 2022 we are already 140,000 kilometers of national highway, a length increase from 96,000 kilometers. Similarly, he said that we have to ensure that every district headquarter should be connected by national highway. He said that the aspirational districts that we talk about should be connected by the national highway. Tribal areas, backward areas, Naxal affected areas, strategic roads, border roads are roads for economic importance, like the port connectivity. Today, every major port and most of the minor ports are connected by the 4-lane, 6-lane highways for a better evacuation of the goods that come to us or we export. So those kind of, he said we must connect all regional tourist places, all tourist places, so that it boosts our religious tourism, it boosts our cultural tourism. So, those kind of 10, 15 guidelines Honorable Prime Minister gave to everybody. And then the whole work started in that direction. Today, after 7 years, India's highway sector is not only growing with a rapid pace, but for example, today we are building 38 kilometers of highway per day. Every day, 38 kilometers of new or reconstructed highways are being built. More than 15 lakh crore of highway construction projects are undergoing in last 7 years. More than 50,000 kilometers of highway are to be expected to be completed by another 2024. Bharatmala, the ambitious highway development program which Prime Minister put forward, envisages completing of around 34,500 kilometers of national highway length, out of which almost 18,000 kilometers is already awarded and under construction. It also envisages building almost 13 new expressways, which are all greenfield expressways, so that the entire mobility in India increases. For example, we have identified around 90 economic corridors which were decongested, so that our goods movement becomes much, much faster. Today you will surprised to know, in 2014, our logistics cost was almost 18% for moving our goods. Today we have come down to almost between 14 to 15%, and we envisage to come down to almost 10%. Because if we want our businesses to be competitive, we can't be 7-8% higher than the global average. Global average is around 8 to 10%. So we'll have to come down to the global average. Then only our MSMEs, our handicraft people, our artisans, our agri producers, our farmers, whatever they produce, whatever they manufacture, we will be able to competitively sell it to the global market. So, those kind of visions which Honorable Prime Minister gave to, so it was not only about building highways, it was about looking at that larger picture, or ensuring that from moving India, from transporting India to the moving India, that pace of development has happened in last 7 years. Of course, a lot of efforts went into it. More than 22 policy decisions were taken by cabinet. Various new innovative models of implementation were brought in. A lot of innovative financing was brought in. Technology was brought in. New construction practices were brought in. Efforts were put in to adopt new construction materials, more sustainable, greener materials. So all this put together, it's a package of, putting your efforts on every aspects of highway development, whether it is construction management, contract management, materials management, bringing in technology. For example, today, in last 3 years, now on toll plazas, we are experiencing almost queueless toll plazas all across. Yeah. You can actually zoom away in less than 12 seconds on any highway. So, those kind of efforts has come in last 7 years, and I'm sure those efforts will take India's infrastructure to the global standard. For example, the new Delhi Mumbai expressway that is being built, you travel on Delhi Mumbai expressways, and I'm sure none of us will argue that this is comparable to any expressway in the world. So I think
Really,
that's the
yeah.
larger vision which Prime Minister and Mr. Gadkari gave to the ministry, and probably implemented on ground.
Thank you for this wonderful summary of all the work that has been done, Vaibhavji. Even for somebody like me who's been following infrastructure news, it puts things into perspectives. Now,
Thank
before I move on to my next question, I want to ask you a small follow-up. It's essentially the same bureaucracy we are talking about. It's essentially the same policy making bodies that we're talking about. But since 2014, if there has been a difference, what has enabled that? What is the mantra? Because you are somebody who's seen this firsthand from within. So we want to know what has changed internally.
I think I always say when I did my management and then later on continued to work on the management practices, I used to take a session by the name, it is man who makes quality, not the machine. If you want to produce best quality product, it is not the machine that will produce best quality product, it is the man that will produce best quality product. So I think the same system was there. I think the 4-point mantra which Mr. Gadkari as a minister gave to everybody from day one, that I want decisions to be taken. So fast track decision making was his first word in every meeting, everywhere he used it. If you don't keep it pending. Even if you say you can't do it, just say it, you can't do it, and close the decision. Don't keep the loop open. So he said, fast track our decisioning process. Then the second mantra he gave is, try to be as positive as finding solutions. So be a solution provider than to be a problem creator. So for example, I remember we used to do meetings like a town hall meetings with all the contractors, independent engineers, bankers, engineers, authority engineers, our officers. And he used to start meetings at 11 o'clock in the morning, and we used to continue till late in the evening, till almost 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the night. And we used to discuss each project threadbare, what were the issues. So address the ground problems was another his mantra. For example, I remember he speaking to a lot of district collectors, a central minister of his stature talking to district collectors about how a land acquisition can be expedited. For example, a group of infrastructure was created under his chairmanship, where ministries from other central government ministers were member of that group, because a lot of coordination, cooperation, and communication was lacking among government departments and government ministries. For example, I'll share you an example of railways. All the national highways, we build railway overbridge or railway underbridge. It used to take almost 6 years, 7 years to build a railway overbridge, because permission used to take 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, 8 years. One railway overbridge in Nagpur took 17 years to be built. So he was aware about first-hand challenges in those kind of things. So he said, let's create mechanisms where within government department there is a better coordination, communication, and cooperation. So we sit down with railways. We identified problems. For example, the railway overbridge approval used to go to the 19 tables for approval. We said, this is all bureaucratic. We need to change this. The Highway Ministry of Government of India, we used to pay a lot of charges to Railway Ministry of Government of India. And then Railway Ministry used to pay a lot of charges to Highway Ministry of Government of India. So two ministers sat down. I remember Suresh Prabhu was the Railway Minister at that time. Two ministers sat down. All the officers were sat down, and minister told us that within 8 days, I want a simplified system. We signed an MOU between two ministries. An online portal was created. We said, let's standardize the designs of railway overbridge. If the design is standard, no approvals are required. If the design is changed because of the site specific requirements, then only approvals will be required. The online process was initiated. Every movement of the file was available online. So officer was supposed to do it in time bound manner. If he doesn't do it, automatically the file goes escalated to the next level. So the whole process began, and within 1 year we got more than 100 ROB approvals. So the whole speed of implementation got changes. Approval which
Right.
used to take 7 years, 10 years, 8 years, 3 years, got approved in 1 year. So I think those kind of small, eye to the details. So that positivity he brought in. We brought in a lot of incentive mechanism to the contractors. For example, if you finish the work in time, you were given incentives. Every single day of saving was compensated by some monetary benefits to the contractor, and every single day of delay was disincentivized by putting up a penalty for delay. So that initiated a work culture. I know a company which generated 150 crore in bonus in 2 years because of the work that they completed on time. That's kind of work culture came into picture, and people were incentivized to do fast. We started award system for the engineers, our own engineers, for doing good work, again to appreciate people's initiative. And he used to say in a meeting very openly, if the mistakes are bona fide, I'll be with you. If the mistakes are malified, I'll sack you. But don't stop work. Don't let things get delayed because of non-decisive efforts. Another effort was bringing in a lot of transparency. So for example, a lot of challenges which were common among the contractors in project implementation were identified, and we went to cabinet and took 22 decisions at the cabinet level to help the sector to kind of open up its own potential and implement faster. So I think single-handed focus, for example, land acquisition, we simplified the whole process. We identified that there is a challenge that if a farmer loses his land, it is his livelihood, so he has to be compensated rightly. And so we adopted the new act, and a 4 times compensation was given to the land. Today people go to the ministry saying, then please acquire our land for your highways. The whole culture was changed. The value was brought in what we do. So I think that all put together, whether it is fast tracking of decision making, whether it is out of box problem solving methodologies, whether it is bringing in technology, whether it is uh, uh, increasing cooperation, coordination, and communication among within the department, whether it is putting people on task, whether it is continuous follow up. I think I used to remember as his private secretary, he used to take a morning flight and go to some other place, and at 7 o'clock he used to call me while going to the airport saying that these are 4 5 issues, what happened to these issues. He used to follow up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I used to remember when he used to land somewhere in the night, that time also he used to call me at 12 o'clock, and he used to carry a small diary in his pocket and used to take notes of what needs to be followed. So I think that kind of passionate approach from the leadership, and the fact that slowly the entire team realizing that there are no vested interests, there is a full transparency in the process, there is a larger interest, national interest in everybody's mind. So people started appreciating that. For example, everybody likes somebody if somebody is socially appreciated. I remember engineers coming back to me and telling me they went to some wedding, they went to some social functions, some family functions, and then when people used to introduce them as people working in National Highway Authority or Ministry of Road Transport Highway, and people started appreciating that you guys are doing wonderful job, they started feeling happy, they started feeling appreciated, recognized socially. And that also further motivated our own same engineers, same officers, that if somebody appreciates your work, then you get even motivated, better motivated. So I think all this put together, the whole transformation started.
You've given us some wonderful insights, especially about the work culture, because of late we are drawn into this comparison game as to how well we are doing as compared to Japan or China. And one thing that is very appreciated about these countries is that they're very hardworking. But if you look at our own history, civilizationally speaking, we have been one of the hardest working people in the world. So I think that the attitude tweaking was required and the government had to do it, and that work culture was somehow brought into place and made it more effective. So congratulations to you and the
Thank you.
government for achieving that. Vaibhavji, you've written a wonderful book called Building Bridges, where you have shared your vision map and the roadmap for how India's infrastructure needs to develop going ahead. Uh, so first of all, when did you decide to write this book? And secondly, could you also briefly summarize what your vision for India is?
I'll tell you two stories first, and then that will probably, uh, you know, uh, there was one logistics conference, and minister went as a speaker in that conference as a chief guest. And after his speech, there were question answer session, and one very senior fellow stood up and said, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" So minister said, "Please ask me a question. Kindly introduce yourself and ask me a question." He said, "Sir, I am CMD BHEL, Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited. And I want to ask you a question that you talked about logistics costs. You talked about bringing logistics costs down. You spoke about how India could be competitive by bringing the logistics down. And we manufacture, heavy engineering materials. For example, most of the power plants are built by us. Most of the heavy engineering machines are built up by us. But it takes almost similar time for us to transport goods from the factory to the site as it takes in manufacturing those goods. And how do we improve this?" So minister said, "Please give your suggestions, what you expect us to do, and I'll be more than happy to do it." He said, "Sir, it's your ministry that ensures that they are delayed." And minister was surprised. He said, "What is that it happens?" So he told us that most of our cargo are overweight cargo and over dimension cargo because they are large machineries. And to transport those cargo on the national highway, a special permission has to be taken because the trailers are also huge. You might have seen while traveling around, their sizes are huge, 100 wheels trailer, 200 wheel trailer, and very odd size. So he said, for every crossing every bridge, we have to take a permission. And to do that, we need to do a conditional survey of that bridge, pre and post transportation, and then only we get a permission. And there is a huge cost involved in doing that. So he was surprised. Then he came back to the ministry and told me, kindly find out what is the challenge. So I we started deep diving and trying to understand. So there was a process in our ministry that for moving these cargoes, if they are crossing any of the bridge, the responsibility of doing a conditional survey was on the transporter to do that survey. We empaneled some agencies. That agency used to do some survey, and this was all more of a money minting exercise than anything else. So minister said it is our primary responsibility as a service provider to ensure that our bridges are well maintained, are uh, sustainable to carry those materials. And even if survey has to be done, it is our responsibility. We may like to charge any amount of money to them, but that is our responsibility to do it.
Right.
And so he took the first rule that hereafter no survey will be responsibility of the transporter. It is the ministry who will do that. And we converted the entire process into an online approval and deem approvals kind of. So this was one incident that opened up a lot of things for us on the bridge side. The second incident was we got a kind of a proposal from the ministry saying that we need to do a conditional survey of our bridges, and there was a huge cost involved. So minister said that's a huge cost. Why so much cost needs to be incurred on doing the conditional survey of the bridges? And then we got to know, when we started interacting with people who quoted for that tender, they said, "Sir, we don't know how much bridge we need to survey." So we were surprised that how do you don't know how much survey you need to do. So we got to know that we don't know how many bridges are there on our national highway. We didn't know numbers. So we started again, trying to get the information. We were told that every 5 years we do this survey, but those data are put into some files, and those files are non-retrievable, non-usable. It was more of a ritual. So we said how it's happening globally. So we created India's first digitalized Indian bridge management system, where all the data of the bridges, small structures, large structures, culverts, everything was collected, digitalized, with longitude, latitude, geographical importance, geostructural importance, designs of the bridge, its economic importance, everything put together, pictures, videographs, everything put together. And this Indian bridge management system was a platform in which entire bridge data was available. And today it is world's biggest bridge database that is available. More than 1,72,000 structures are identified and digitalized on this platform. The other idea of this platform was, we have seen so many times in our country and globally, bridges have faces so many accidents. For example, In 2003, Damanganga, there was a bridge collapse and more than 40 school-going students died. Their lorry, washed away. And there are so many such examples. Still, recently in 2016, Savitri bridge collapse on Mumbai Goa highway, and minister went there and he said, as a minister, it is my responsibility and I feel guilty for not maintaining the highway in a way it should have been. And he said, we'll build this bridge in 6 months, and 165 days straight we build that bridge. So, all this put together, we thought there is a serious need of bringing in the better management system in terms of health of the bridges, maintaining our bridges. So this Indian bridge management system, of course, I hope that the ministry continues to use it year after year. But if it is utilized properly, this will throw to the ministry time and again about which are the bridges that need immediate maintenance, which are the bridges that need major maintenance, which are the bridges that needs replacement, which are the bridges where it has lost its life. I still remember there are few bridges in India where British government has sent a letter saying that the life of the bridge is over because their documentation was very good. So, we appreciated British governments for their documentation. But when will we do our own way of, improving our own processes and system? So Indian bridge management system was one such effort in that direction. So more than what we did, we wanted to, in a way, convey to the budding engineers, budding officers, administrators, people in the governance, or people who even want to go into politics for that matter, to let them know that we, with limited resources and limited efforts, but a very pointed, larger interest effort, we can bring in a lot of systems that can change, bring in change in our country. For example, if we are able to save these accidents, if we are able to save the life of the people, that is the biggest contribution probably any system can do to any nation. And with that objective, we thought we must share this story with everybody, just to give them idea. So this whole book which we wrote on building bridges, along with my co-author Mr. Sachinand Joshi, who was actively involved in developing this system, we jointly wrote that book, we co-authored that book. And that book is a kind of a story of how Indian bridge management system was adopted, built, designed, and how people are now using it. And we tried to write the entire story with a very human angle and a very storytelling format, so that people, from the reader's perspective, they will be happy on to read it. It will be more reader friendly and interesting for students or officers to read, and hopefully they'll like it.
I really look forward to reading the book, Vaibhav ji. Congratulations on your book as well. But if I have to ask you, how can we compete and catch up with the scale in which countries like China are growing? Because they're also our strategic rivals today, not just in terms of our economic growth, but also in terms of critical infrastructure development in some of the border areas, for that matter. And especially because of the incursions that they're doing, you more than anybody else know how important it is for us to develop these roads, whether it's in the northeast or in the northern borders along the LOC. So, in that sense, what are the changes that we've seen in terms of intermodal or border road area development in the last few years, and has it made any difference?
No, definitely. For that matter, today everybody talks about it. Our border roads are being developed in much faster way. For example, between Jammu to Srinagar and Leh, we are building 9 tunnels that will ensure that the entire nation is connected to Leh Ladakh 365 days all weather connectivity. Today almost 6 months our forces has to ensure that their supplies are stored for remaining 6 months. So most of their energy goes into ensuring that we store enough to be used into during the winter, peak winters. So I think those, whether it is moving those kind of materials, moving of people, uh, in northeast alone, more than 5 lakh crore is being invested to develop the entire northeast region. For example, you rightly said, to catching up with China, we'll have to run with a double speed. And today, we are proud that the highway construction in India is the fastest in the world. And we'll have to continue it for another 5-10 years probably to ensure our infrastructure is better built And of course, as has been emphasized in PM Gati Shakti by the Prime Minister, it has to be multimodal. We will have to be look at modes of transport whichever is efficient and better, cost effective, fastest. For example, most of the highways are now being connected even to the river ports. For example, in Sahibganj we are developing a multimodal logistics hub where highway brings in 6-lane roads, where waterways, Ganga waterway is being used to transport the goods and people, where railway is building its own connectivity, or for that matter, in Jogi Pada in Assam, similar multimodal center is being developed. Or Varanasi, there is a river port which has been developed, and a rail and highway has been connected. For example, more than 17 places, national highways are being built to ensure that in any kind of emergencies, Air Force aircraft can be landed. And we did a couple of successful trials of landing such aircraft. So
Yes.
definitely we will have to have a multimodal approach in ensuring our all modes are used efficiently, effectively, with the most
Hmm.
fastest way, cost effective way. And I think we'll have to run fast. Of course, China has its own advantage. They are on the plateau, so they have built their own infrastructure. But I think that cannot be our excuse of building our own infrastructure. Today we are, for example, building a highway directly connecting to Kailash Mansarovar from Indian side, and I
Right.
think by 23 December that highway will be ready. In fact, to build that highway, Border Roads Organization use special choppers to carry those equipments to the altitude of 13,000 and 15,000 feet. And then hardly a meter or 2 meters of highway is built on a day. But constantly our forces are working, our engineers are working. And I think the kind of pace that we have seen in last 7 years, if we are able to continue that pace for another 7-8 years or 10 years, there is no reason why India should be comparable in terms of infrastructure standard globally with anybody.
I hope that's the case because sometimes it's scary with the kind of political statements that are made, especially if I refer to one of the former defense minister's statement, where in the parliament he had told that the reason that we did not develop border roads was because we did not want the Chinese tanks to move in using those routes built by India. So these are the kind of excuses and the lethargy that was displayed, I think, by the political system, and it lacked a political will. So perhaps that political will is what was presented this time, and that enabled a lot of changes.
Yes.
You also mentioned the PM Gati Shakti master plan, and this is something that has been discussed ever since the budget was presented. Vaibhav, why is it so important, and how is it different from the other infrastructure projects that we already have in India?
I think it's important for the simple reason that infrastructure is being built from last now 7 years in this government with a rapid pace, whether it is highways, railways, metro. I think today more than 17 cities are metros is being developed, or rapid rail systems, or there are so many such fast trains, bullet trains, high speed trains. Everything is being done. As I said, there is a greater need to ensure that this multimodal, because we can't afford to we will always be a capital scale sensitive nation as our economy. So we'll have to build our infrastructure for efficient using, smart use, and therefore a multimodal approach that is required. And I think PM Gati Shakti effectively provides that multimodal approach, and it also address to the larger concern of ensuring our logistics costs are competitive globally. Third aspect I look at it is, uh, you know plans are always good. The key lies, as they say in an English phrase, the devil lies in details. So implementing those plans is something which is key, and I think PM Gati Shakti looks at ensuring that there is a better coordination. For example, most of the projects are delayed because of, say, land acquisition, environment clearances, forest clearances, wildlife clearances, railway clearances, this clearance, that clearance. So for example, finance minister announces that we will create a portal so that those clearances are quite on a faster mode. So PM Gati Shakti, I think, emphasizes of utilizing our resources smartly and ensuring that enough, push is provided for faster implementing those projects at a very rapid pace than probably we can think of. And for example, highway, the minister has now kept a target of 50 kilometers per day construction. So I
Right.
think in railway, the pace of electrification has increased almost 200 times compared to the earlier, 10 years below pace. So I think that is something PM Gati Shakti envisages. And I think that's a right approach, that if we are able to continue this focus for another 7, 8 years or 10 years, that will not only provide a better infrastructure and make us competitive, that will also provide a larger push to the GDP growth that we expect. For example, the better infrastructure will easily add on to 2-3% in the growth rate in GDP. That is something which I think is a larger interest.
This is very interesting. Vaibhavji, were also mentioning about how private players were a little hesitant to invest, especially in building roads, etc. And you mentioned the case of L&T. Now we see a lot of private players are involved in building infrastructure for India, and that has become a model, although it was criticized. But I think people have understood the relevance and the value of it, because the Indian people were demanding for good infrastructure for a very long time, and it seems that their demands have been finally heard. When we talk about FASTag, even that has revolutionized the way in which movement of vehicles happen very fastly and in a automated manner, if I may. So for me, I know this perhaps at a very peripheral level, but you'll be able to explain it better. The UPA had a build, operate, transfer model, and then this government introduced the hyperannuity model. So first of all, what's the difference between the two, and why is this government's approach making a difference?
Uh, you rightly said, private sector initially in 2014 was a bit scared about, because most of their projects were delayed. And the delay was primarily because of the, delay means there will be overrun of cost, there will be the additional burden of the interest. And in most of the BOT, build, operate, transfer project, the whole investment and bank loan is taken by the concessioner. And they are normally, there is a huge amount of stress if project get delayed and the interest burden goes on increasing. uh, and the delay were primarily because either of the land acquisitions or approvals at various stages, or clearances from the environment, forest, wildlife, railways, those kind of. So most of the delays were not attributed to the contractors primarily or concessioner. They were primarily attributed to the governance, or some or other government department. So we also found out that from the Indian perspective, our developer concessioner doesn't have deep equity pockets. So we need to realize that and create models that will suit our own infrastructure, that will suit our own Indian companies, and will give them a better opportunity to participate and grow. Because how do we develop our own capabilities? We start building. If you want to be a marathon runner, you don't start running 45 kilometers a day. You start with 2 kilometer, 3 kilometer, 5 kilometer, and go on adding. So we thought, let's develop our capabilities. And initially, for almost a year or so, we focused on doing a lot of EPC projects, engineering project contracts, that help our contractors to come out of the problem, build their capacities, build their resources. Their problems in BOT resolved. The stress on the banks were resolved. Banks were taken on board. This hybrid annuity model was very India specific, where 60% of the money is paid, 40% of the money is paid during construction, and remaining 60% is paid in equal annuities. So that took away stress from the contractors, because most of the liquidity is required during construction. And that also took away responsibility, the market risk, traffic risk was took away from the concessioner. Concessioner were not supposed to collect the toll and recover their money. It is the government who collected the toll and paid them in equal annuities. So it reduces a lot of risk from the concessioner's perspective. So it helped in developing their own capabilities. Now we can say in last 7 years, none of the global companies were able to beat Indian companies. Most of our tenders are global tenders in highway sector, but none of the non-Indian companies were able to compete with Indian companies in building roads. In last 7 years, more than 7 Indian companies have listed themselves on a stock exchange, the highway companies. More than 200 new contractors were added. For example, I remember a conference in Ladakh where small contractors from the Ladakh were, brought together by the highway authority, and a 2-day session was organized for those contractors, how they can become a national highway contractors, and efforts were put in so that the local people gets opportunity to build this highway. Special conditions were relaxed for them to participate in the highway tenders. They were given special incentives in terms of some advances for machinery, some interest-free advances for machinery and things like that, or concession on interest of the leasing of the machinery and things like that. So it motivated them to participate, and capacities were built in, say, for example, Ladakh or Northeast, for example. Now there are a lot of companies Northeast which are from Northeast and building roads for Northeast. So I think taking the development to the every stage has helped build capacity in India. And today our companies are globally competitive. Most of the Indian larger companies today are competing globally on infrastructure front. So I think more than the model, of course, we tweaked the model like hybrid annuity. We brought in new models that suits our own conditions. But the larger implementation effort was given to ensure that now, for example, we said that we will not start the work till 80% land is available, till all clearances are in hand. Contract was not awarded. The whole process of awarding contract was made so transparent that within 24 hours, the successful bidder used to get the LOI. The whole payment system was was made so transparent and efficient that after submitting a bill, 7th day contractor used to get their money. So I think this all put together, it has to work like almost a corporate. Then only we will be able to deliver infrastructure which is required to be delivered, and even more faster, because we are much behind the global standard.
Absolutely, and we are seeing the results of all your hard work today. Vaibhavji, it was an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
You've educated me as well on a lot of these
Thank you,
subjects.
Shafan. It was
Namaste.
pleasure
I
talking
hope,
to you.
we can have this conversation again. My extreme pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Sharan.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.